järjekordselt ei võta ma väga palju teie aega, vaid lasen järgmise osa sisse juhatada hoopis meie partnerile Helen Cookil. Helen, I hope you're with us. And
yes,
I would really like you, very good. And I would like you to introduce the next section.
Thank you very much, Maria. Well, we certainly have a tough set of speakers to follow after those we heard from during the break, but we will see what we can do. So it's my great pleasure to introduce an initiative that draws upon the work that Fermi has done this year on the subject of SMR licensing, but which I think really reinforces a number of important themes, both arising from that work and more generally, in the context of seeing nuclear energy successfully deployed in decarbonised energy systems. Themes such as the significance of collaboration within the nuclear industry in efforts to resolve what are common challenges and to achieve common objectives. Also, the importance of forging alignment between industry and with those entities that perform the task of regulating the activities of the industry. Successful deployment of SMRs requires all stakeholders to mutually identify these issues and challenges and to combine in our efforts to solve them. To that end, representatives of the nuclear industry, many of whom may be potential future customers of SMRs, come together today in support of a set of principles set forth in a document that we have called the Tallinn Declaration on the Future of SMR Licensing. Now, recognising that we can't all be together in person in Tallinn today to sign the declaration, I'm going to read out the text, summarising it in places, and then ask a representative of each of our signatories to confirm their support for the declaration and to give some brief remarks. So first, let me put the declaration on my screen. Right, so the Tallinn Declaration on the Future of SMR Licensing states, well, gathered virtually, but wishing we could be together in Tallinn, Estonia today, noting the formation of the European SMR Alliance in January 2020 with the goal of facilitating widespread SMR deployment in Europe by the 2030s, recognising the urgent response needed to meet the EU's commitment to achieving carbon neutrality by 2050, believing that SMRs can make a significant contribution to low carbon energy mixes in the EU and globally, respectful of the role of nuclear regulatory bodies in ensuring safe, secure and peaceful uses of nuclear energy, cognizant of the impact of nuclear licensing processes and regulatory matters on the business case for SMRs, their design criteria, development of supply chains, and overall viability of SMR deployment, conscious that effective and efficient utilisation of experienced global human resources in reactor licensing is necessary, and convinced that SMR vendors and future SMR licensees must proactively engage with regulators in their own countries and in key jurisdictions around the world to promote the optimal way forward for SMR licensing. Hereby support and will promote the following principles of SMR licensing. A pragmatic approach to SMR licensing must be employed to overcome licensing and regulatory challenges and to reduce SMR project risk relating to nuclear regulation and the licensing process. SMR design standardisation must be facilitated to the greatest extent possible. In developing or updating the regulatory framework applicable to SMRs, host country regulatory bodies should seek to facilitate regulatory harmonisation. Regulatory framework should be based on the IAEA safety standards and implement EU nuclear safety directives, as well as give due consideration to compatibility with relevant vendor or reference plant country of origin or other experienced nuclear countries' regulatory regimes. As the licensee will have prime responsibility for the safety of its SMR plant, the licence applicant will need to be an intelligent customer, competent to undertake an independent assessment of the safety case and prepare the licensing documentation prior to its submission to the host country regulatory body. Licence applicants should seek maximum utilisation of an existing safety case prepared for a standard SMR or a reference plant design. To the extent the host country deems it appropriate in its particular circumstances, the licensing process should enable host country nuclear regulatory body to achieve maximum utilisation of the safety assessment of the standard SMR or reference plant design conducted by an experienced, independent and transparent regulatory body originating from the vendor or reference plant country of origin or from another experienced nuclear country, thereby making effective use of experienced global human resources in licensing and continuously building upon the safety case for the relevant SMR. In all circumstances, the host country nuclear regulatory body maintains sovereign and independent decision-making authority. The host country nuclear regulatory body should conduct an independent safety assessment based on a graded approach that prioritises safety significant items, deviations from the standard SMR or reference plant design, and site-specific and licence applicant-specific matters. Close cooperation between the host country nuclear regulatory body and the nuclear regulatory body of the relevant vendor or reference plant country of origin or other experienced nuclear country is essential. Cooperation mechanisms which enable mutual recognition and acceptance of regulatory approvals of experienced, independent and transparent foreign regulatory bodies should be pursued. A mechanism for international design certification should also be pursued and made viable in the future. And finally, the signatories will consider the work being undertaken by the IAEA, the NEA, IFNEC, the WNA, and the EUR, among others. Now with that, I am going to ask one by one for the signatories to confirm your support for the declaration and give some brief remarks. So first, could I please call upon Kalev Kalamets from Fermi Energia in Estonia.
Hello. Hi to Australia. So Tallinn calling here, and indeed Fermi Energia supports that declaration, and I can confirm that we take very seriously the challenge of developing Fermi Energia systematically over coming years into being intelligent customer, and we seek cooperation with Estonian government to implement the principles in this current declaration. So looking forward to many years of interesting work with you and our partners.
Thank you very much, Kalev. Next, Olli Kaimalainen from Fortum in Finland.
Yes. Hello. From Fortum side, so we are happy to join this declaration, and we think the licensing risk is one of the biggest challenges regarding possible deployment of SMRs, and I consider this declaration as an attempt to emphasize this importance. And the main concern here is in particular the fragmentation of the regulatory and other national requirements. And just to emphasize that, of course, the nuclear safety as such cannot be compromised. So this is not to suggest to relax the expectations of safety performance itself, but this has to be done in a smarter way. And so we simply cannot afford redesigning an SMR for each country or redoing all the paperwork for each country, which pretty much is what has been done in the recent new build project. So this would kill the idea of SMRs. And so there is work ongoing currently on harmonization and of requirements in many international organizations, both on the regulatory side and on the industry side. And this is very important to continue, and it's very important to go deeper in that. But on top of that, we need to find ways to do the licensing in a smarter way, I would say, and without having to completely redesign the SMR for each country. This is the most important thing. And so hopefully this declaration encourages that work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Olli, and thank you also for Fortum's work on the licensing study that we did last year. Next, I'd like to call on Marcus Eriksson, the representative of Vattenfall from Sweden.
Hello, Helen, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for preparing this common action. And yes, certainly, Vattenfall supports the declaration. We think it is well written and it aligns with Vattenfall's view on this topic. We know that updating the regulatory framework takes time, and there is an urgent need to engage and communicate on this subject. The declaration itself identifies key issues that we agree are vital to deal with to overcome licensing and regulatory challenges in order to reduce the overall economic risks of an SMR project. International harmonization of licensing requirements needs to be deepened. International design certification must be pursued. Deviations from reference plant design must be avoided. And SMR cannot be afforded to be redesigned for each country. And these topics are relevant for Vattenfall since we believe that small modular reactors holds a future opportunity for achieving deep decarbonization in Europe as well as in Sweden. On the other hand, the declaration puts a finger on some of the bottlenecks that we need to overcome to enable this technology to its full extent. So for these reasons, we support the declaration, and we think it summarizes appropriate principles for common actions that we are committed to promote. Thank you, Helen.
Thank you very much, Marcus. Next, I'd like to call on Anastasia, representing Tractebel from Belgium.
Thanks, Helen. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great. Yeah, so, well, on behalf of Tractebel, I can also confirm that we are proud to be a signatory of this declaration. I think the colleague before me just summarized it perfectly. This is a document that highlights that sound licensing is successful. That's a key step to take for the industry. And I think the declaration itself correctly points out some of the necessary ingredients to make that happen. For example, I believe that simplicity and pragmatism, which somewhat is inspired from the past, in replicating the successful safety case from the country of origin, is something that really is necessary. And so I believe the declaration correctly highlights that. There are other elements that are really important in this. The graded approach, the concept of making things in a smart way, giving the importance where it matters and not necessarily trying to do everything as deep as we used to do it in nuclear, but putting the effort where it's safety significant. And I would say more than that, what I really like into this declaration is also the fact that it is a first attempt for some of the stakeholders from the nuclear industry to come together and say, well, we want to move forward with SMRs. We want to do it in a smart, simple, pragmatic way, which is, I believe, a really important step. And so I really applaud Fermi's Energia's courage and Khalef Kalamet's leadership on being a trailblazer for SMRs to become a reality in Europe. I think it's really important, and it's important to also to highlight it because over the 2 years that this project has really taken shape right now, we kind of seeing the necessity of that kind of leadership and that kind of trailblazing. So I'm really pleased that our joint work with Fermi Energia has resulted in such a declaration, and also resulted in the signing of a new agreement that I believe will accelerate the collaboration between Tractebel and Fermi over the coming years to really make the deployment of SMRs a reality in Estonia and beyond. And I believe it also confirms Tractebel's desire to be at the side of Fermi Energia and the other players in Europe with skin in the game to make that happen, because I do believe that Europe needs that if we want to make the zero carbon transition a reality and a success. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Anase. And I also personally concur with your comments in applauding the leadership of Kalev Kalemets and all the founders of Fermi Energa in not only this area, but so many areas which we are discussing today that will be so important to the future of SMRs. So thank you, Anase. And could we move now to Rafał Kaspro, who is representing Syntos Green Energy from Poland.
Thank you, Helen. Good morning, everybody. As a Syntos Green Energy, we strongly support declaration, and thank you very much, Helen and Kalev, for preparing this. I think it's great work. We all agree here that country of origin idea is a great path towards which can solve a lot of problems we already considered. But I would like to say that we all agree here what should be done, and we have a similar point of view. And I hope that with this declaration, we reach people who not fully agree with us, and decision makers and politicians on both European and national level. And we desperately need to communicate these to this group of decision makers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rafał. And next we have Peter Zavotsky from Czech of the Czech Republic.
Good morning. Dear colleagues, it was mentioned here several times that the whole Europe has a common and I have to say quite difficult or not easy task to be carbon neutral in 2050. Some countries with optimal environmental conditions will rely mostly on renewables like wind farms offshore and big hydro in Alps and so on and so on. But approximately half of the EU will have to develop nuclear to extend the design life of the existing power plants, build a new one, including SMRs. Of course, there will be strong opposition from anti-nuclear countries, and Rafał mentioned it. We are on the same page, and we understand each other. But there are still anti-nuclear countries. There will be opposition from them, and we have to really work together as let's say nuclear countries, and we have to face most way for construction of the new nuclear, which means a common approach to the politicians, to the European Commission. Not only for licensing, which is key of the Tallinn Declaration, but also financing. You know about the discussion in the EU or European Commission about the taxonomy and how difficult it is to reach agreement that the nuclear should be part of the solution. We have to discuss supply chain and use, let's say, industrial standards for building power plants, not to make it, let's say, too complicated. And definitely, as we are here on the conference, we are not competitors. We really have to work together to really reach new construction of SMRs in Europe to replace fossil power plants. For example, in our country, the Czech Republic, we have 10,000 megawatts, which is half of the installed capacity in coal, and we will have to replace it. We will have to replace consuming gas and other things in transportation by electricity. So we have to increase installed capacity, and it's a huge task. So let's work together. Let's find a way how to do it on time, on budget, and prove that the nuclear is really the part of the solution. So finally, we as a Czech group fully support the Tallinn Declaration. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Peter. And next, could I please call upon Alan Tatu, representing Nuclear Electrica in Romania.
Greetings to everyone. Nuclear Electrica is fully supporting this declaration. For us, it's very important to lower the risks of the licensing process and the cost of the electricity that could become from a possible SMR in the future. Because in European Union, as you all know, we are working in very competitive markets. So it's very important that we plan in advance to lower any risk we can foresee. I think levelizing the licensing processes among surrounding countries or region countries can work to the benefit of all, because the fundamentals that stay behind the SMR development is to deploy fleets and not just the singular units in each country. That won't work financially. Nuclear energy is still expensive. It's an expensive proposition. So for countries that have small grids like or relatively small grids like Romania or Estonia or Bulgaria and so on, it's hard to make a business case for a large fleet. So we have to cooperate regionally, not just in this area of the licensing, but also in the areas as were mentioned before, supply chain, financing, and so on. So again, we fully support this initiative and like to support any other initiative in the future.
Thank you very much, Alan. And next, could I please call upon Matthijs Bekkers from the Elise Foundation in the Netherlands?
Yes, thank you very much, Helen and Kalev, for putting this together, this brilliant declaration, which we wholeheartedly support. The major reason for doing this is speed. Climate change is a pressing matter. We need to stay below 1.5 degrees, at least that's what we all agreed upon in Europe. And that's simply not going to happen if we don't manage to deploy nuclear power plants in a quick and effective and cheap fashion. And I think that this declaration is a good step forward in this regard. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matthijs. And last but certainly not least, could I call upon Sarah Cullen, representing 18 for 0 from Ireland?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Cool. So thanks very much for having us. 18 for 0 is a small group of professionals, and we're working on a voluntary basis to remove the legislative bans on nuclear power development in Ireland. So we're at the beginning of a journey, and we're fortunate to benefit from a very strong collaborative network in Europe, which has shown us fantastic support. We greatly value our cooperation with Fermi Energia and the European SMR Alliance, and we believe that this declaration on SMR licensing is a fantastic initiative and resource, which we fully support. For us, this is a concrete step in the planning for nuclear development in Ireland, and it forms an excellent template for future work in the area of licensing. But more than this, it's something tangible to prove that we're not alone in our thinking, and that there's a wave of new nuclear development across Europe, and this is something that all countries can benefit from. So we look forward to our continued work with Fermi Energia and the European SMR Alliance into the future, and we fully support this declaration.
Thank you very much, Sarah. As I mentioned, the declaration will be made public today and available from today. Sarah, could you stay on the unmuted button side here? Because I have a question for you. How important do you believe regulatory and licensing matters are in your conversations around lifting the nuclear prohibitions in Ireland?
Yeah, so Ireland's interesting because we're a few steps behind everyone in that regard. For us, it's really important to have these sorts of initiatives. There's something kind of concrete we can use now to begin to address nuclear power development in Ireland and to reduce risk. Having a kind of good licensing framework now gives confidence that we could use SMRs in the future in a timely and cost-effective manner. And yeah, this sort of initiative creates more certainty around timescales and the requirements we'd need for licensing. And that's really crucial for us to make our case to support nuclear.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. I now have a question to our representatives from the established nuclear countries. Perhaps Alan Tatu from Nuclear Electrica would like to take this one. Do you see the optimal licensing process for SMRs being different in established versus newcomer nuclear countries? Or do you think that all can benefit from enhanced efficiencies in reactor licensing?
Thank you for the question. I see here a challenge and an opportunity at the same time. So for countries with established nuclear industry, the regulatory body already have been, let's say, I'm repeating myself, established based on what technology was adopted a while ago. For example, Canada technology. So the licensing framework for us is pretty much tailored for Canada technology. So for us, it's a challenge to adjust to new technologies. So sometimes changing something is, it takes more time than developing something new. But at the same time, I see an opportunity here to work with countries that will embark in the nuclear industry, building nuclear power plants, because they start from fresh ground, and they can develop more flexible licensing processes from which we could learn and collaborate to also adopt such, let's say, amendments to our already established license framework. It's
Thanks,
more
Alan.
to talk about here, but I will resume the just.
Of course, thank you very much. And maybe one final question then to a newcomer nuclear country. And Rafael, maybe I'll put you on the spot if you're available to answer this question. What would you like to see the experienced regulatory bodies, for example, the US or Canada, do to support SMR licensing in a newcomer country? What practical mechanisms do you think would be helpful?
Thank you for this surprising question. Yes, definitely NRC and Canadian regulator are leading the role in SMRs right now. We all know that OPG decision to deploy SMRs soon will be important, let's say crucial. US NRC has most important experience. So I think that the, let's say, policy towards country of origin and bilateral agreements with the European countries could help a lot. I mean, country of origin recognition, bilateral agreement between individual countries, because it would be probably hard to achieve this on European level. But this is what is possible to do. For example, agreement between Estonia, let's take this brave country, and the best SMR developer in Europe, Fermi Energia. Let's say that it would be possible, especially I hope with the current administration in US, to achieve bilateral agreements supporting recognition of the SMR's licensing provided by Canadian and US regulator. It would be extremely important to achieve this.
Thanks, Rafael. So in conclusion, may I thank on behalf of Fermi Energia all of the other signatories and their representatives today, not only for your contributions to the declaration, but of course for your support of it. We certainly look forward to working with you going forward. And if I could just say in conclusion, who needs Bill Gates or President Obama when you have the knowledgeable and charismatic speakers representing the European nuclear industry? Thank you very much. Maria, back to you.